Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our second short session. After that, there is lunch, and more coffee. So I'm sorry to break you early, but I'm sure you're going to compensate later. And for this session, we have a keynote speaker that will talk about rising issue that becomes more and more problematic in the scientific world. And it's not directly to our study, but to our basically all our field. And that's the phenomenon of paper mill, the production of fraudulent papers that basically contaminate our science and our understanding and knowledge. This is becoming a serious problem for two main reasons. Part is the pressure on us scientists to publish, but also in many ways, the way the publication network is based and profit of more and more publication, which create economical models to produce paper mills. We just this year identified a student, a PhD candidate here in Ben-Gurion University that produced over a short period of time more than 100 papers. And we had to terminate and closely expel the student. And so this is for us, all of us, to be very vigilant to our trainees and also for our community, and make sure that we work efforts and put our efforts to clean and avoid this situation. I will not speak more. I will give the stage to our keynote speaker, Professor Bernhard from the Magdeburg University, and he will talk about his machine and then other issues that are regarding this problem and how to approach it. So the stage is yours. And
okay, thank you very much for the invitation. I hope you can hear me well. Is that okay?
yes.
Okay, perfect. Well, before I start my lecture, let me just tell you my compassion for the situation you have in Israel now. And we think of your country and also of the victims of this terroristic attack last year. The reason I am not able to attend is not that I'm afraid to travel, but my wife was too concerned of security risks. And I hope you understand and forgive me for that. But hopefully the message comes across clear, even without me being present, about the mass pollution of the scientific record by fake publications. And because much of it is supported by AI, I think the topic fits your conference, I hope. Now, let me start by saying a rather broad and statement that may sound pompous to you, but which I think is actually true, because this is the largest science scam of all times. And how it came about and what it means, I want to discuss with you today. The interesting issue is that the problem is so huge, but nobody has an idea. When you speak to people of conference organizers or presidents of societies, you name it, they had no idea. And this goes on or started about 20 years ago. And I wanted to give you a short introduction to the topic so that you become aware of it and maybe also are on the lookout for possible fake publications that you may use to plan your work, which obviously needs to be avoided. So the first step in my activities was about 3 years ago when I discovered as an editor of a journal that there were some strange papers, and I also read an article about paper mills, which was not a very popular topic back then. But I said to myself, wait a minute, if there are fake publications in the literature, maybe my own journal is affected. So I started with a little study where I contacted the authors and I asked them a few questions like an interrogator would do, something like, would you be willing to send your data, or would you please give me the name of the head of your human resources department, including email and the name and email of your president. And a lot of them, or a good number of them, didn't answer. And despite 3 retraction warnings, they still didn't answer. We ended up retracting them And we got only one complaint from all the ones we could retract it, from somebody who begged me, please reverse the retraction. So this led me to a statistical analysis in a systematic manner that I followed over several years. And I learned a lot along the way about the business of a fake production and also who benefits from it and how it's organized. I started with a meeting that was attended in Munich 2 years ago, almost precisely 2 years ago, sorry, which was attended by Jennifer Byrne and Dorothy Bishop. And Jennifer is a specialist in fake gene sequences that she spends some of her time on identifying and listing them. And Dorothy Bishop has been battling the publishers for a long time, and like the soul shouter in a big forest, nobody listens. And Chris Braff actually came personally to the meeting. He's the Research Integrity Director at Springer Nature. So he presented his views from the point of view of the publishers. So let me start by giving you a little statistics here. We just look at the number of publications, how they grew from 1996 to the year 2023. And if you just take a look at some representative countries here, Israel and Germany is on the map, but pay attention to the USA and China and India. You see that in 1996, the US published about 360,000 papers, and they grew by about the same amount. So they kind of doubled in 2023 by another 350. So about 714,000 papers were published. And this represents what I would consider a natural growth of the scientific system, of the economy, maybe of people wanting to publish more and so on. So it's kind of a natural growth. And Israel is sort of right around in the ballpark, and so is Germany. The percentage change about doubles, roughly at least. But if you look at China and India, you have an increase not of 160% or 140%, but China has an increase of 3,200%. That is, they increased their publication output by 32 times, which one may consider unnatural. And the question arises, how could this be explained? Similarly, India made a big step, but also South Korea. And basically, that's it. That's the message of this. So it is an issue of concern and also one, of course, of understanding what is going on here. Now, if you look at the publications plotted over time, and one of my students helped me analyze this, you see that the growth, the global growth, which is the lower line, of the number of publications is kind of steady. So is the one from the United States. Started, of course, at a much higher level, but it's also steadily increasing. But the growth in China and India would kind of look a bit similar. There is a massive growth starting around 2003. So the issue is what happens in the 20 years and how come there was such a steady and linear growth. Linear, interestingly, because people suspect that authors have to fulfill quotas in China in order to keep the job or increase salary or rising ranks, whatever. And so a steady increase like this is compatible with the hypothesis that there are regulations that require certain quotas. Now, how is this possible? I think in part, it is possible by the activity of paper mills, which you can easily find in the internet, not only in China. Here you have a few that one of my Chinese friends in China sent me. And they advertise quite openly, and you see it in the quote below, that they say, look, competition is getting much stronger, and in order for students to graduate or get their PhD, or for young professors to rise up the ranks, to become the chief, it's almost impossible to reach it, or it's too difficult and too risky. Therefore, please consider our offer that we write as ghostwriters you publication. So when you read these offers, even in Germany, you have them, and I'm sure in other countries, India, US, you name it, UK, they have these offers. And one of my students actually, she's right now writing her thesis. She just wanted to check if she can get some help with the language. So just to polish the English. And she got the answer, yes, we can do that. But if you're writing your thesis, we can also help you. We just write the thesis for you. How about that? And of course, she knew that I'm working on this, and she was appalled by this offer. But you see how aggressive the marketing is going on. And when such aggressive marketing is witnessed, you can easily suspect a big profitable business. So talking about business, money matters, and follow the money. You understand the mechanisms a bit better. This is a graph that shows you something that you all know, of course, is that as a scientist, you have an idea, you ask a question, you do an experiment, and then you understand something new, you have like some new insight, leading eventually to a manuscript which you send to the editor. Now, all of that can be bypassed by your idea just being shared with the paper mill and tell them, look, I want to show such and such and such, please write a paper for me. You have to pay some euros for that, and then, or US dollars or yuan or whatever, and they will write the paper for you, send it to the editor, make sure it gets published. Now, if we look at the industry as a whole, the publishing industry, it's quite interesting when you see who is covering the cost of all of this creation of new knowledge. Most of the costs are covered by the taxpayers, foundations, and companies who produce science, who create science, who run the labs, who finance the people working on it, and so on. And the total R&D cost worldwide, I just realized this is a German slide, but nevertheless, I'm sure you understand it. The R&D cost is 2.5 billion euros worldwide, and the APC, that is the publishing charges for the journals, are in the order of 1.2 billion, or Milliarden in German. It's billion. The other one was trillion. Sorry, we get mixed up. It's 1.2 billion euros for publication charges. The benefit that publishers have from running such businesses is in the order of 19 billion euros, of which 40% are profit. So after all the money is spent on the left, the publishers come up with a profit of 7.3 billion euros annually. And then you have to go back, something that you actually had to pay for to get it published, and you have to purchase it again with open access fees. So that explains where the motivations lie, and paper mills play an important role in generating revenue for themselves, of course, but indirectly also revenue for what follows. Now, how do they work? They are for-profit oriented, potentially illegal organizations. Whether it's illegal or not is a question of definition and the local law that you have. And they produce and fabricate fake papers automatically with the support of AI. They not only write the manuscripts, but they polish them in such a quality that they pass peer review. They even suggest peer reviewers who are kind of fake reviewers to the journal. And you can order anything from polishing up the paper that you sent them to creating it from scratch, from nothing, just inventing data and images and what have you. And they do the whole thing. Actually, in a German TV show where I was interviewed, there was an AI sort of expert from the TV station who tried to create himself fake publications, not knowing science at all. Within 2 hours, he produced a paper that was quite remarkably impressive of details of describing a new species of animals in South America that never existed before, but where he basically did the research and presented the research kind of all fake within 2 hours. So almost no time needed to produce, but a great profit to make. Now, who uses the services? Students and scientists that are in need of advancement, either financial or recognition, what have you. they are more often found in low-ranking institutions, and intentionally or not, I don't know, but the statistics of the country benefits from it. So I cannot tell if the government creates quotas to meet a statistical goal, especially one of outperforming the United States, which they do since 2019. But certainly the system puts a lot of pressure, the expectations of the institutions on the scientists to produce fake publications. And they suffer from unrealistic expectations of productivity, how many papers you have to publish. Actually, I heard a story from a friend in China who told me that in the social media, they were circulating the story that a high school student applied to a top university, having already published 3 scientific papers before finishing high school. So I created here a list of all the sins of these paper mills, how they deceive and how they fake. And it ranges from bribing editors and publishers, perhaps even, and hijacking papers from publishers, duplicating publications, just copy paste them and change a few words, maybe in the title and so on. There is a manipulation of the impact factor, which I experienced or witnessed, I should say. Fake emails are used, not only private emails, which is a problem, but also fake institutional emails. You see here an example. The real email could be like Peking University, pku.edu.cn, and then you just add a few letters before that, and there you have your fake address that looks like a real one. Typical signs of fake are image plagiarism, data plagiarism, and fake substances, for example, genes, nonsensical citations. Then also there are certain topics that are inflated with fake papers, such as the field of cancer research in biomedicine. You can buy, sell, and grant authorships as favors. You can even order papers, like you go to the store and you buy a T-shirt. You have like a list, like a bunch of T-shirts hanging on the hanger, and then you can say that T-shirt fits me. I like to buy that. This way, you can buy papers that fit the topic of your research, so that you can just look on the internet and say, "Oh, I want to buy this paper," and then they add you as an author for a fee, of course. They even invent names or they hijack names. Like they put names of people they don't even know about their luck, that they are an author on the paper, some famous scientist even, so that the paper gets more easily accepted by the journal. And there are all kinds of favors and financial incentives that are given out in order to advance this business. So it's basically an assortment of corruption. When I started my work, I looked at Retraction Watch. It's a website where papers which were retracted in the scientific literature are simply listed. And also there are several papers on it. And my first estimate 2 years ago was there were about 15,000 retracted papers. Most of them were fake papers or had some serious problem of reliability. And the number has grown dramatically in the last 2 years, especially after the publisher Hindawi had to retract more than 10,000 papers shortly after Wiley actually acquired Hindawi for a hefty price of $300 million. That wasn't good for the stock exchange, the value of Wiley. But now we have 50,000 retractions, and the number is rising by the day. Now, we studied this question of fake publications mainly with the goal to get sort of a rough estimate of how many fake publications exist in the world. So our goal was not to prove each paper is fake, but to get an estimate by looking at the value of detectors of signs or telltales of potential fake publications. And the paper was published in a preprint server in 2023, and the reference is here above. And actually, we made the hit list in Google AI, because if you enter the question, what is a fake science publication? Google gives you the answer below. It references the science article that talked about our work. I must say, as a scientist, of course, I'm happy to see my name in the list with 860 million searches, which I could never achieve with my publication. So fake publishing has its advantages, at least for this particular incident. I hope you don't mind my joke. Now, how did we do the study? What we did is use the following procedure. We used true fakes, 400 publications that were listed or that are listed in the retraction watch list. So these are retracted papers. And then we selected 400 presumably honest papers that are not in the retraction list. Then we applied different indicators, for example, a non-institutional email or a private email and hospital affiliation and a number of other indicators to check then when you throw these 4 plus 400 papers, so 800 papers sort of in a bucket, and then you mix it, and then you use the indicator to identify which is which, then you can tell how many of the true fakes are detected by your indicator. So to red flag it. So of all the fakes, the known fakes in this sample, we were able to fish out 93% of the fake papers, which is pretty good. So out of 100, we catch 93. But we also initially had a higher false alarm rate, but now we're at a false alarm rate of 12%. A false alarm means we kind of blame them for no reason, or at least we think that there is no reason. They may be false by other definitions, not by the retraction list, by something else. But we have 12% false alarms, which is a pretty good value. So if you have 100 papers and 50% of them are fake, you will catch almost 50%, and 5% or so, or 10% of them will be wrongly accused. On the right side, you see the kind of emails that you can use to check if they're private, or these are all the private emails, not the other ones. So the discrimination ratio of fake versus truth is at around 93%, which is a very good value. Looking then at 1,000 publications picked randomly from PubMed, and then applied our indicators, we came to the conclusion that roughly 10% of all biomedical papers are potential fakes. They are red flags. And by red flags, I like to repeat, is not a proof, but it should be a motivator for take a little bit more effort and scrutiny to check a paper before you review it or before you submit it to the publisher. Now, if we calculate how many in absolute terms of such papers exist in 2023, our best possible estimate now is 186,000 fake publications in the scientific literature at the moment. Or last year, rather. At the moment, it's probably even more. So the way we conducted the study, and I'm not going through all these steps because it's too boring and too detailed, but we did several analyses, track it over time, compare open access journal with non-open access. By the way, open access was almost the 3 journals we checked from Frontiers. They had a 50% red flag rate. And then finally do the validation study to then estimate the incidence. Now, looking at the development of fake, we plotted here the honest versus red flag papers in neuroscience and in medicine. Medicine on the top, the red one in the bar are the potential fakes, and the red line is the percentage. And the lower graph shows in neuroscience, similar to the medicine graph, that the number of fake papers is inclining, is more than double within the last 10 years. So from 2010 to 2020, that is. The country distribution is also an interesting measuring point, because if you look at how many publications from Russia, for example, Turkey or China, must be considered to be red flags or questionable, you see it's about almost 50%. There's a group of countries up there that you can see they are sort of those with the most. And then there is a definite a lower step, a kind of countries, typically also smaller kind of countries, which also have a remarkable, maybe not, maybe yes, kind of in between issue with red flagging issues. And then there's the, let's call it the Western countries that are at much lower values. I'm not in the business of blaming countries. I'm just doing statistics here. When you look at the total contribution among all countries globally, by far the largest percentage is from China. And depending how you calculated it, which measure you use, it's between 50% and 70, even sometimes 80% that originates from China. So that is the source of most of the problematic publications. An interesting side story is the observation that editors are also bribed. There is one paper mill that contacted me, and I had an interesting conversation with them both by email and by Zoom, where they advertised their service, and they offered me for each impact factor of my journal 1,000 euros per paper that they get published in my journal. I showed a lot of interest to learn about the model, but obviously I didn't accept the offer, even though I would be richer now than with my university position. So that being said, explains also that when they then also offer that they then cite my own journal in other of their products, that it is a sign of impact factor manipulation. So they're engineering the impact factor to their advantage so that they get more papers into higher impact factor journals as time grows and as the business succeeds. This could be also an explanation why China has by far more self-citations than other countries. Now, you can order from a paper mill different jobs, a very simple sort of correct my language type of thing, all the way up to complete fabrication and experiments. And the cost depends in part on the complexity of the study, but also of the impact factor that they offer you. So they offer you, okay, if you want one impact factor of 1 to 2, the cost is such, but if you want a higher one, like 2, it's 17,000 euros, or if it's a particularly attractive journal that has much more than that, it can be significant, like 26,000 euros or up. Now, if we then tabulate or calculate how much money do they make, the paper mills, that is the fake industry, and we take the biomedical production of publication at 1.8 million per year. Total all of science in the Web of Science is 5.2 million. Multiplied by 0.1, 10% of it, we come to 520,000 fake publications per year, which then translates, if you assume a certain cost, let's say 10,000 on average per publication, which the authors divide among themselves, so it's not so expensive for each of them. You come at a total revenue projected to all of science at about 1.4 billion euros annually. A big business. Now, the motivation of it lies in the incentive system of science, that is that paper number and impact factor is almost the only thing that counts these days. I'm exaggerating the case. That, of course, is a motivation for scientists to submit their publications with the help of paper mills. There are a number of methods that we can think of. One of them to fight the system is to develop indicators and automatically retract them from submission or from the permanent record. We could eliminate fakes from the public record, red flag them, hold publishers, authors, paper mills accountable, and rethink, also reconsider what is the fair business model for publishers. I know they don't like that, and they know me, and they don't like my lectures, so they never invite me. But nevertheless, this is the fact of the matter. And one could consider certain sanctions in the system, which obviously is something that would have to be coordinated among a great number of stakeholders that have their feet in the pie. Finally, since we're at an AI meeting here, I just pulled out this slide. It's a study published in Cell Reports Physical Science, volume 4. That's already an indicator that the journal may, yeah, but this is an interesting study nevertheless. There, the authors asked the question if a human is able to detect an AI written paper, and you see that no matter what AI you use, GTP 3.5, 4, or some versions of it, a human can discover it, but AI can't discover AI so well. So there is an issue that can be perhaps studied a bit more in the future in order to find a way also to automatically identify fake publications. So why do publishers love AI? This list is from notes that I've taken during one of the meetings of the publishers, and they do see some risks, a potential bias in training the data, processing volume, that they need a lot of petabytes, petaflop memory to process it, that you cannot train every day, so it becomes outdated. Plus, there's a limit of what you can actually what kind of data are available for your crawling and training the system, and high quality scientific data. They claim that it's not possible to use that to train AI. But they see a lot of advantages. It saves money and time, improves the language, identifying new topics, quick summary of the results, which they then can sell to the mass media in the world out there, automatically from scientists who paid for their own product. They can identify reviewers, match manuscripts with journals, and so on and so forth. So there are a lot of advantages for them. The disadvantage for us as scientists, the more that AI gets involved, the more junk will also pollute the system. And if you think it logically all the way to the end, the more junk you have, and when it starts taking the majority, the majority will outcompete in the searches. And logically, and if you think it all the way to the end, it could lead to a knowledge collapse. I don't think this will happen, but theoretically it's possible. So how can we deal with it, and how does it affect our world? It's a profitable business, both for the paper mills and indirectly for the publishers, of course, but fake wastes a lot of human and financial resources. It creates a number of risks for society in health, technology, environment, and economy. Let me give you one example. A young woman walked up to me after a lecture I gave in Berlin, and she says, "How do you do the detection?" And at that time, I didn't tell her. So I can't tell you, but what is your business? And she says, "Well, I have a little consulting firm that consults countries of the underdeveloped world, which fertilizer they should use for their soil, for the agriculture. And occasionally I see papers that really look strange, and I don't know if I can recommend it and what to think of it. But if they are fake, I could end up consulting them with the wrong fertilizer, which could end up in a famine." So that, to me, I go, wow, I never thought of it, that one single topic, which fertilizer is good for which soil, can kill people in masses. And if we think that through in all levels of society, and it's also a security concern, then it should be clear to everyone that this is a problem of society at large, and not only of us scientists writing a nice paper or a less nice paper. So we need to consider these issues, and also that honest authors who publish their paper, having gone through the sweat work of doing experiments and getting it published in the end, they get harmed by being blamed of being part of a big fake group. So that is an issue. And it ruins the reputation not only of the authors themselves if they publish fake, I mean, that's obvious, but also perhaps the institutions and the countries that allow it or do not prevent it sufficiently. And finally, the public may lose trust in science at large, which makes it more difficult for us to convince politicians to give us money to do the work. And with ChatGPT and AI nowadays, the problem is even bigger because the probability is high, in my opinion, that fake science will end up in the news. And it can be manipulated at will, not only because it's fake, but it could also be willfully changed in order to reach a certain ideological or technical advantage or some other goal. So the fake publications are a great risk. 10% or more, our estimates, of polluting our permanent scientific record, which is the knowledge that we depend on in our modern industry-oriented society. So it pulls basically the carpet under our feet. Therefore, it needs to be stopped. And I'd like to end by mentioning that, of course, I didn't do the work alone. Several of my students helped me with it. And what we have here is nothing less but a new dimension of fake publishing and greatest science scam of all times. So I hope I didn't cause you a depression or anxiety now, but hopefully increase your motivation to pay more attention to the topic and help all of us who are activists in this field to move forward and make it known to the public and start fighting it. Thank you very much for your attention.